All right, welcome to this video. This is a series that we've developed that is focused on helping you develop tasting skills, tasting wines blind in preparation for the WSET Level 3 wine examination. And really the way this works is I'm going to go through a tasting note. I am going to give you my impressions of how this wine tastes and how I would actually mark this wine if and when I would actually put it on an exam. And then I will kind of give you a cue to the fact that we're going to pause for a minute after I've done my tasting note, give you a second to kind of figure out and consolidate your notes a little bit and think about it. And then I'll come back and we'll reveal and we'll taste the wine together and reveal what it is. So let's get started. All right, I have a red wine in the glass with me today. And I know it's a little hard to kind of see whether or not this wine has a deep concentration or medium, but I can kind of see through the top of the wine, see the top of the stem of my glass, and I can also see through the wine down to the page that I have on the table here. So I'm going to call this clear, medium, ruby, and ruby is a variation on red that a lot of wines fall into. So we're going to call this as ruby. It has a little bit of a watery meniscus around the edge, not something you have to worry about for the examination process, but just to kind of note that sometimes that watery edge, particularly on a wine like this, can imply maybe some wood aging because the pigmentation has degraded and can't quite reach the edge. So just a side note on that. On the nose, the wine smells great. I'm getting actually, it's clean, and I'm getting a good amount of aromatics coming out of the glass. So I'm going to call this as medium plus intensity. I think it really is jumping out, and I can already smell that there's a lot of things that I'm going to be making notes of here in a second. Development call, I'm going to call this developing because I can already kind of get a sense that there's some tertiary here, which will play out, I think, in a second. So all the way primary, secondary, and tertiary. On the nose, I'm getting a lot of red fruits, particularly raspberry, red cherry, red plum. Nothing really in the black camp, and I think just kind of sticking to that. Also, though, kind of complementing that are these secondary flavors from wood. There's a lot of cedar here. There's a little bit of smoke and char, touch of toast, vanilla, even a little bit of chocolate, kind of dusty Dutch cocoa kind of chocolate. So definitely a wine that's seen some time in barrel and aging. And in fact, I think there's a little bit of tertiary, as I said a second ago, kind of creeping in. There's a slight savory, almost slight fresh compost kind of quality going on here. So like forest floor, and maybe just with that cedar, a touch of tobacco perhaps. So a couple things that are giving me a clue that this wine has some tertiary flavors and might actually have some age to it. All right, let's give it a taste. Wow. All right, I'm already thinking ahead to balance. This wine has kind of a smoothness, a lushness to it that as I work through these notes here, I think will play out a little bit to help kind of build up an argument for complexity and balance. I'm already thinking ahead to my quality judgment. And so on the palate, this wine is definitely dry. It dries my palate out. Acid level is really, it's not overwhelming. It's medium. It's not really kind of causing a lot of juiciness on my palate. And but the tannins are there, and the tannins I think cause a little bit more juiciness on my palate. So I'm going to call medium plus on the tannins. They're pretty ripe. They're pretty showy on my palate. I think I'd want to have this wine with some proteins, a steak or something like that, which would make it taste pretty well. Alcohol is medium. I'm not really getting a lot of burn. It's there. I can almost sense it, but nothing extraordinary. So medium is going to be my call on that. Body, you know, there's a kind of a lushness. Those tannins help kind of pull everything together. The flavor intensity, so medium plus on body. Flavor intensity, I think, is medium plus too, because I'm getting a lot of ripe fruit flavors as well as that secondary kind of aspect coming in. So medium plus on flavor intensity, and I'm tasting that fruit and cedar in combination for quite a long time. So I'm going to call medium plus actually on the finish here because I think there's a durability to these flavors that kind of come through. And what I'm tasting on the palate is very similar to what I experienced on the nose, and there's a lot of that red raspberry, kind of concentrated, ripe raspberry, cherry, red plum. The cedar comes through a bit. I get a little bit more of the vanilla, a little bit of the toast, and definitely a little bit of that savory tobacco kind of quality. So everything that I experience on the nose is definitely sort of coming through on the palate. And it's just kind of amplified a little bit, creating this sort of lush, balanced, elegant wine. So on my quality assessment, balance, definitely. Length, I called it pretty high, medium plus. Intensity, medium plus. And I think all the things that I named in kind of conjunction with the fact that I'm tasting this wine for a long time give me a really good argument on complexity. So this is a wine that actually I think shows as a very good example. I'm not sure it's a wine that I really want to age, but I think it actually has a good potential for aging. So the fact that it has some tannin, it has a lot of good fruit still in it, and it's only starting to get to tertiary, I think is an argument that this wine could actually age, because it's probably built around grapes that are designed to age, comes from a region that are designed to age. And I think it could benefit from another few years in the cellar to let those tannins kind of consolidate and soften and let that fruit come forward a little bit. So I'm gonna call this as a very good, you can drink it now, but has potential for aging red wine. All right, so give it some thought. Think about what I just told you, what you have on the note page there, and we'll come back in a second and we'll talk about the wine. All right, so let's talk about this red wine. This is actually a really well-balanced wine. I called it as a very good example of what it is. I think it's a blend. Well, I know it's a blend. And I say that because I think you're getting elements that are coming from a red wine that produces a lot of sort of ripe cherry flavors like Merlot, as well as sort of a density and a complexity that probably is going to come from Cabernet Sauvignon. So this wine is actually from Bordeaux, and it's called Chateau Castera, Castera. It's from the Medoc, so we're left bank here, where we're going to have a bunch of it's always kind of thought of that the left bank is Cabernet Sauvignon driven, which it sort of is, but there's actually a fair amount of Merlot that is grown over there. It just sort of depends on your soil and where exactly you are located in the Medoc. But a pretty well-made wine. And the other term that's on the label here that I like to point out is called Cru Bourgeois. So the Cru Bourgeois is for me, it's actually a label term that I would gravitate towards, because these always represent very good examples of well-made wine, and usually at affordable prices. So Chateau Castera, Cru Bourgeois from the Medoc. They don't give us the breakdown on the back label. Maybe below, what I'll do is I'll try to look up the blend here, and I'll put that in the video. But this is 2016, so this wine has actually had a few years of age to it. So I think that wood component, the cedar, the vanilla, the toast, all that kind of stuff, does in fact come through on the palate. But and the wine's had a few years to age and shows some of these tertiaries, but I also think it's got, I think it's got some time to go, and I would like to see this wine in a few years. So that call for the has potential to age, I think is definitely appropriate here. Alcohol-wise, 13.5%, so right smack dab in the middle, and so pretty interesting wine. I think it shows well, and is a good example of a Cru Bourgeois from the Medoc. All right, cheers.